23rd. And we have Jody Agard. I said it right.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you for the backstage coaching. And we are going to talk Course in Miracles, non-duality, meditation, yoga as well. One of the things that I'm excited about talking with you is it's almost like any direction we go, I'm going to have this vast interest and curiosity. So we really can't go wrong just to talk.
Yeah, absolutely not. We can't.
I'm going to ask you, in some circles, it's considered a debatable issue. Is A Course in Miracles a non-dual practice? Is it a non-dual? Is it a course in non-duality, ultimately?
Ultimately, I've come to that understanding that it is. It wasn't my understanding when I first began to dabble. And this was probably 15 years ago. And like you, I've touched and goed with it. It's been a journey over the years. But the deeper I go, the deeper understanding I have that it all points back to the one,
Right.
which is non-dual.
What came first to you? A non-dual tradition or A Course in Miracles?
I think non-dual tradition. I mean, that dates back ancient. I don't have the years necessarily, so I can't be specific, but my feeling sentiment is that it points well beyond the 70s when A Course in Miracles came.
Right. Well, how about for you personally, though? Did you come from a tradition?
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
That's the question.
That makes more sense, doesn't it?
So no, non-dual came way later. So like I said, I picked up Course in Miracles 15 years ago. I felt it. I loved it. I felt drawn to it. Actually, I was handed A Course in Miracles, and then I think it was about a year later, I was handed Disappearance of the Universe, which was a huge gift to me because it helped me to better understand what A Course in Miracles was. And then really up until about 2020, I was more of a reading student. I was more of a workbook student. I wasn't really applying it as deeply as I could. And I had a mentor, Jennifer Hadley, who was great. And I really felt that throughout the classes and the mentoring and the more and more understanding, something within me was beginning to wake up. And actually in 2024, it was May of 2024, because I remember when it was right around the big sunbursts, the solar flares that were happening, and it was really big to do. And it was right around that time where I felt this dissolution of seeking. I felt for so long I was seeking. I was trying to find something. I was trying to find the answer. I was trying to find peace. I was trying to find all of these things. And at first, of course, it started with the personal self, personal development, and then it moved over into spiritual ego. Still seeking, still searching, still feeling like it was outside of me. If I only had this. And that just dissolved. I just had this recognition of the self, the true self. And then that awakening really led me just to going to Google and saying, sort of like, what's happening. I had an idea of what was happening, but I didn't even necessarily have the non-dual language.
Right.
Even just a few years ago, and so then from that time until now, I've just been having a better understanding of non-dual and learning about all these wonderful, great teachers. But primarily, it's just been A Course in Miracles, and I really attribute it to, I think, the purification of the mind process. As I began to live it and without making exceptions for it in my daily life, I think slowly but surely, I was beginning to really recognize the self that's here.
I've been talking about that quite a bit as well. The falling away of the seeker, that seeking energy. that is always chasing that carrot on a stick. And once we think we have it, there's always another. For me, it's another a deeper breath work, uh, holding a yoga pose longer, uh, going deeper in meditation. There's always some technique, some part of the journey that I just had it. Um, and one day, and this is after decades of reading the course, it's always funny how something long familiar can strike you with new eyes and
Absolutely.
just wake you up instantly. I've read lesson 122, which is forgiveness offers me everything that I want.
Mm,
And it's such beautiful language. And it occurred to me that, and I've mentioned this several times, when I when I practice forgiveness as offered by Course in Miracles, I am as awakened and as enlightened as I'm ever going to be. And it doesn't matter if that sticks, because I can always keep forgiving. There's always going to be something that comes up. So it's the practice. There was a great Zen meditation teacher, Dogen, who was asked by his followers if meditation led to enlightenment. And he said no, which really upset all the people that had been meditating with him for 20 years, 30 years. And he laughed and he said, meditation is enlightenment. It doesn't lead you anywhere. That when you meditate, you are enlightened. Um, and that's the way it is with me now with forgiveness, that there's no need to see because I always have something. And I'm always amazed at how deep forgiveness actually takes us.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that ties into meditation too, because I too have had quite the journey with meditation. And I think forgiveness, meditation, it all speaks to the dissolution of self. That's when we meditate. I've come to understand that when we meditate, it's just that. It's just dissolving this character, this body mind, this personal self identification, and resting in our true essence as our true essence.
Right. Um, and you do beautiful non-dual meditations.
Thank
Um,
you.
and and I hope everyone, uh, I will make sure to put your link in the description so
Thank
people can go visit. And sometimes I think that we have these, and I'm going to call it an experience, although in and of itself, it's not an experience. Everything that comes after is the experience. Like the personality, Eric, that's the experience. But that which is before, and I know that your meditation is on the I am presence, and that is that which comes before, right?
Yes, before thought, before labels, before identity. I am Jody, who is a woman, who is a mother, who's a wife, who's all these things. All of the meditations point back to the I am presence because everything else is under the false self identification. So gratitude, and this might upset some people who are heavily meditating in the traditional sense, but even just anchoring into gratitude and anchoring in nature and affirmations, those are helpful, and they've been so helpful for me. I feel like they've been a bridge to me really understanding what true meditation is, because even when I would meditate for 30 minutes to an hour in the traditional sense, I still felt like there was something missing. And that's why I'm so passionate about meditation now, which is what I call true meditation, which is just simply abiding as we are. And so it's not a doing, it's a being what we already are. And there's nothing more simpler than that. Just, I think there's a lot of complex things around meditation, but there's nothing more easy than just to be what we are. It's actually harder to be what we are not.
Right. And you actually offer that um, when you talk about healing, like the difference between healing and fixing.
Yeah. So the fixing is all tied to the personal self identification. Healing is the healing of the mind, not of the body apparatus. Um, Course in Miracles calls, the magic, the taking the pills. And yes, those things are helpful. But when we heal our mind, it can't help but to heal the body, or not, depending on what's according to our script. But true healing is the healing of the mind, so that can be expressed out in our physical body. If, again, depending on what's in our script, if we are to be healed or not. So the healing of the mind really is just all about accepting what is, anchoring and abiding in our true nature, because as our mind settles from the personal self-identification, the guidance comes in, the intuitive guidance, the divine guidance, spirit's guidance, and so it's not just saying, okay, you know, I have cancer, I have the flu, and I'm just going to accept it. It's a matter of accepting this as part of the personal self-identification's expression in that moment, but also recognizing that's not who we are. So we are not the sickness, we are not the ailment, we are not the pain. We are so much more than this body apparatus. And when we abide in that, the things of the body are dissolved, healed, possibly, miraculously.
Sometimes it seems like healing can be just another form of seeking, and that we feel as we're chasing after that healing, we're actually keeping true healing at bay, because all of our energy is spent. There's got to be a cure. There's got to be a way of fixing this, of feeling better. And all the while, we're simply missing the point of, and I heard Lisa Natoli talk about this in her own sickness. Can you just be with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Lisa she's great around talking about healing, and just all kinds of great programs. But yeah, exactly. Can we just be with it? Because judgment is not our true mind. And that what you were speaking to is, there's something wrong and I have to fix this. And it's just all the spiritual ego. But instead, accepting what is. And I say that, but not doing a spiritual bypass. That doesn't mean saying, like, I'm just going to smile because I have this disease now, or I have this, diagnosis that can seem really scary. The things of the personal self-identification, the emotions, the sensations are all going to arise to the surface. And true forgiveness is really just allowing that to be and not judging it, because that's us abiding in our true mind without the judgment, which promotes healing. But then the healing's not needed, because you feel at peace and acceptance.
Right. Sort of like a paradox.
Absolutely.
And, I think part of spiritual wisdom is accepting the paradoxical nature of, unless you first seek, it seems, although I've definitely heard of people and I've met people who've had that spontaneous awakening where they were never seeking. But I, I love Jack Kornfield, the Buddhist meditation teacher,
Mm-hmm.
when he talks about meditation and he's asked, does meditation cause awakening? And he said, no. Or the question was, is awakening through meditation, is it an accident? Or does meditation lead to it? And he said that awakening is an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone.
I like that.
Me too. And I think that's the whole thing with the course is, there's 365 lessons and you do them every day, but the goal isn't to be good at doing lessons. And you and I talked about this backstage.
Yep.
The goal is to be an expression of love.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was the biggest game changer for me. The shift from reading A Course in Miracles over and over, getting frustrated with it, throwing it aside, saying, I'm done with A Course in Miracles, and then it drawing me back in, is always coming back to that. It's just, yeah, coming out of the story into the holy instant, which is what we are. Which is,
Do you
yeah.
find when you have a deep sense of that I am presence, and then in a moment, Jody comes rushing back in. And I know some people again who have those awakenings, and the personality presence never comes rushing back in. For me, that's never been the case, and that used to be kind of frustrating. Uh, but now the personality is what appears, and when I when I'm able to not take it quite so seriously, um, it's less annoying than it used to be.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And I was under that same belief that when I fully awaken, I won't come back into this mind. The Jody character won't be active. I'll just be, forever at bliss.
Right,
And while much of that is true, I'm definitely a lot more peaceful, I think, just naturally. And I can feel that the peace is not of the Jody character. Um it's a it's a piece beyond my own understanding sometimes, where I kind of
right.
look and go, wow, if this was, 10, 15 years ago, I would not be feeling. So I recognize that. But this misbelief of not dipping in and dipping out, I think it's kind of rampant in this arena a little bit. But
Not
the thing is
non-dual
tricky.
community,
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's just, for me, when the Jody character comes online, is what I say to myself. Exactly that. Okay, the character has come online, and I can just observe it. I can watch the stories, I can watch the fears, I can be uninterested and uninvolved, as if I'm watching a movie
right?
that's just kind of playing out, whereas I'm no longer identified with the stories, with the fears, with the anxiousness, with the, millions of different sensations that run through the human body.
And the amazing thing is watching that Eric presence come and go, and the Jody presence come and go, is that which remains at all times.
Absolutely.
And that makes all the difference. Touching base with that over and over again. So it's like just dipping into a vat of dye, and every time you dip in um, and you pull the cloth out, it's a little more the solid color of what you actually are.
Yeah, and we're never a part of it. So even when the characters of Eric and Jody come online, we're never separate from that which we are identifying, that is our true self.
Right.
So our mind can believe that we're separate. Oh, I reacted this way and I shouldn't have, and so I'm separate from this I am presence, and I am presence wouldn't do that, and that's just not true. The I am is here, pervading everything always, whether we're sleeping or driving or doing the dishes or reacting or responding. And it's really just about not judging. I think that's where the judge, I've noticed for myself, that's been a deep practice of mine, of allowing the human nature to show up as she wants to, but not becoming identified with it. That's the key. Allowing it
And
to express.
that's the big um, that's where the course leads you into the amazing thing. The amazing thing with judgment is how I can catch myself um, uh, those little judgments coming in, and even judging my ability to be non-judging. That it's almost infinite regression. That there's always a hook that can catch you. Um, but the key is that in all of that go to catch your own judgment and don't judge it. Just relax. Be the presence of which you are.
Absolutely. A question that comes to my mind often when I'm in that space and I recognize it is just simply, who's the I that's judging? Who's the I that's judging right now? Because it's never the I am. It's never the big I. It's always the small I. Always, without exception.
Right.
Yep.
That and that silence that answers all of those questions is profound, and uh, the fact that we can just keep returning to it, and really do think, as I said in that lesson 122, that it offers everything that I need. That um, it has been a number of years since I felt that frantic energy of um, seeking for something that was so subtle. And it's amazing that we're seeking something that's already present.
Absolutely. It's already here always. Yeah. And the seeking mind seeks. And that's what the seeking mind does because it's lacking, because it's believing that it's the separate entity. It's separated itself from God. And so of course it's looking, saying, where's my other half? Where's this piece?
Right.
And the I that wakes up, of course, is not the I am. The character, the small I doesn't wake up. Um, which is all tied to the seeking and the judging and everything we're talking about. But absolutely the answers are in the silence. And silence doesn't always mean that the room is quiet or that there can still be sensations happening, still thoughts running rampant, but coming into the I am. Re- I've shifted away from saying returning because again, that elicits my mind going, hey, you're separate from it. It's recognizing. It's just simply just recognizing that it's here always. And that's, when we're in the figuring out mind, when we're in the analytical, what am I going to do mind? Oh no, this thing is happening and all the thoughts are happening. That's my go-to, is just closing my eyes or not closing my eyes. Sometimes I can't close my eyes and the Jody character has gotten activated and I'm driving. It's just recognition, a recognition of what I already am. And then the answers from there come from that silence, and they're not from the ego.
Right. Jody, how has forgiveness played in with your recognition of the I am presence?
So forgiveness for me, in alignment with the Course in Miracles, is just that, allowing things to be exactly as they are and not judge them. That's it. Because again, I think that just peels the layers off from the personal self becoming involved and interested in the happenings of the world, making the dream more real. Um, and so when instead we can I can come into a place of maybe not love right off the bat, but a sense of neutrality, then the I am presence is is more I'm more aware. I'm recognizing it on a deeper level than with all the judgments and the personal self-identification chatter.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. It does.
Okay.
Um, because like everything else, especially maybe in the spiritual traditions, um, we think complicated is better. That you know, we we love the sound of things that um, seem far out and strange, and um, that because it holds a promise of something mysterious. But this sense of returning home I mean, it is a mystery, but it's not mysterious because it really is home, and it's so available that when it's almost like you're falling back into it. And
Absolutely.
when you're there, um, you just know. Um, and of
I'm
course, if you're bumped out of it, not that you're ever really out of it, then those questions come up. How do I get it back? Um, for me, there was a heavy, almost a depression because I started a lot of this because I didn't like myself.
mm,
And when you have that moment of welcoming silence and everything is still and everything is accepting, um, and you feel at home, and then the air character comes rushing back, it was almost like you again. I'd had
mhm.
enough of you. I was hoping that you were gone. So it took me a little bit to uh, make peace with the return of that um, character. and now that's part of my forgiveness practice, actually, is forgiving the judgment of myself, of
Mhm.
that personality ever needed to go anywhere.
That's right. Yeah. We're not asked to do anything again, but to accept the changelessness, the eternal, and abide as that. So I too I've had abandonment stories. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 15. And so that blended itself into, my adulthood and abandonment and self-hatred and just all the things. But those can all be brought in as awareness, showing it as awareness. And yeah, to resist, I think, just perpetuates the personal self identification, as I'm sure that you've experienced yourself. But the more I resisted my personality traits and the this and the that, the more I hated myself.
Right.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, it goes back to again non-judgment and bringing that to the Holy Spirit.
what so was it that that personal sense of um, not being worthy of the blame and the judgment that brought you originally to the course?
Yeah. So by the time I got to the course, it was 2009 around there, and at that point, my dad died when I was 15, so I think that was like 19 years later, and I was still carrying that pain, the blame, the shame, the stories, and I got to a point where I was ready. I actually had so here's actually I don't think I've actually ever formally shared this, so I'm kind of excited. Um, in 2010, I was in a, a dark space in the sense of I had not healed. I went to therapy and I did all the things, traditionally that I could around my dad's suicide. But I just got to a place where I wanted just to release. And long story short, something triggered me, which then triggered my my ego even more, which then triggered my abandonment issues. And what I always did was I always grabbed my dad's journals. He had left me 5 journals when he had died. And so anytime I felt like I wanted to be close to him, I would take his journals and I would read them. And so I was on the patio and I was crying and sobbing, angry at God. I was brought up Catholic, so I had a lot of like the anger and just all of the things. And I just kept saying, why? I want to release this. Help me, God, help me, God. And in that frantic moment, a still, small, very clear, very direct voice said, "You are not lacking your father's journal. You are not lacking your father's suicide note. You are lacking a shift in perception to see your dad's journal." And it was much more clear than that. I'm kind of getting the two stories mixed up, but in that moment, I just had a recognition of seeing things through a different lens, and that was through love rather than fear, because my whole teenage years, 20s, 30s were all based on this lack. I was missing something. And for me, it was a suicide note. Um, Here's the words that came up. It was you're not lacking a suicide note. You're failing to see the gift in your dad's 5 journals. And then from there, I had this awakening of I don't know I can't even put it into words, but it was a peace and love that it was tied to heaven. That's all I can say. It was just, not heaven as an outside place, but
Right.
it was a really big shift in perception. And from that moment on, I mean, the next day I walked out of my garage and I was putting the kids in the car and I saw the birds and everything sounded louder, everything was more clear. And then that really led me into spiritual seeking, like what is happening? What is going on? And I joined unity churches and all different things. And then I was led to A Course in Miracles, but it was from the suffering. ultimately. All that to say, it was the suffering that led me to Course in Miracles.
Um, and you literally had the experience of a miracle. That the definition by A Course in Miracles is a shift in perception. Um,
Like that.
and when you read that, did you think that's what happened?
Absolutely. I did. And it was very clear to me as to why I was being drawn to A Course in Miracles. The further I read it, the further I began to really understand. Um, I could see that, yeah, there was a lot of things where "Oh, that's what that was," or um, "This is what I'm experiencing right now." Yeah, even though it was very abstract or
Right.
felt it.
Um, and of course, there was the suffering. You mentioned your father's suicide, uh, but everything that led up to that suicide had to have a great, great impact on you.
It did. Um, it did in the sense of in the earthly realm. I mean, I think even going back to the child, I think I've always been one to ask really big questions. I remember lying in my bed as a young little girl saying, "Who am I? What is this?" Knowing that there's something bigger. Um, but I would say what led to that was love. Honestly, I look back at the pain of my dad's death, and it all comes back to love. I loved deeply, of course, my own father on this earthly plane. Um, but then I say that, and I can also recognize that that love for my dad is pales in comparison of how we understand love as it pertains to A Course in Miracles.
Right.
Um, so yeah, the things leading up to my father's death, um, my life was actually pretty easy up until that point. I thought I had life all figured out at the age of 15. It's laughable.
Um, it is, but no less laughable than me thinking I had things figured out when I was 35.
Right.
Um, and uh, David Fishman,
Yep.
uh, he recommended his own practice, and he said, "Give it a try. Um, work with lesson 25 in your daily life. I don't know what anything is for."
Oh, yeah.
And boy, when I was 30, when I was 15, when I was 30, heck, even when I was 50, uh, I knew what everything. I was assured that I knew what everything was for. Um, and I would not only did I know, I would tell you that you don't know what it's for. Um, but I can fix it. I can help you. Um, and so yeah, that self-assurity of a teenager uh,
Yeah.
carries over for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, I'm so grateful for the suffering that I experienced, not just with my dad's suicide, but there was many other crises after that. As a Course in Miracles student, and I almost lost my son. He was in the ICU. He was on a whole breathing tube, and again, bringing in that don't know mind is, I think, what you're speaking to. That don't know mind. I don't know what anything is for. I don't know what I am. Um, I think just allows that I am presence to pervade the whole experience. So yeah, I'm grateful I suffered as much as I did because now I don't suffer.
Right.
I mean, within reason, sometimes the character wants to tell stories, but then it just dissolves into the nothingness that it is because it's nothing.
And I think some people when they hear us say or they hear someone say, "I don't suffer anymore" or "my suffering is reduced," they think that things don't happen.
Mm,
But as you mentioned with your son, things happen. Life continues. Things that we even judgment continues, and we might say this is bad. Um, but a large degree of that psychological suffering that used to be attached to things um, just isn't there.
absolutely. And I completely agree with you in the sense of there's this misbelief that if you work A Course in Miracles just right, everything will be harmonious. And I fell victim to that. And in truth, that I was gifted quite the opportunity to let all of that come crashing down actually in 2022. And I'm sharing this because my son has said he's given me permission over the years to share this, but my oldest son had a suicide attempt, and needless to say, it rocked me to my very core, even as a Course in Miracles student, largely tied to my dad, and all of that was coming up for healing. And then a year later, I almost lost my oldest son. And looking back, as a practicing A Course in Miracles student, I didn't shove those human emotions down, the mother in me who wanted to protect her children. Instead, I was in the cinema with Jesus, watching this with neutrality and fully surrendering to the point where I remember driving to the hospital with my older son to go see him in the ICU. And I said, okay, if he's going to transition, he's going to transition. And there was a deep, and that wasn't me, Jody, the character, because, the mother is, wanting to protect, but I just felt this deep seeking and resisting nothing and allowing everything, surrendering everything. And the more exceptions I made, the more pain I was in. And so I've adopted this practice of not making exceptions and recognizing that when I am upset, no matter how small, I don't make exceptions. I recognize making exceptions. And who is the I that's making exceptions? It's not the I am, it's the small I.
Jody, that story to me felt like almost like you experienced a sigh, like you just ev- everything being let go. So when you said surrendered, that's the image that came to mind, was just this big sigh of, um, I truly um, accept things as they are, um, and you know, we should probably mention that when you said neutrality, um, that the neutrality that's experienced is really love.
Hmm. That's it. Love in its purest form. Yeah.
Um, we did have someone ask a question earlier in the live stream about what is love, and I think you described it so beautifully there. Um, that and that the neutrality of love in its purest form, as you said, is what allows us to hold someone when they're suffering so much, including ourselves.
Yep. Absolutely. That is love. Love is what we are. And we hear that, and that sounds grand and that sounds wonderful. But if we really knew that love is what we are, we wouldn't get as tripped up or more identified as the small self. If we truly knew that love is what we are on a deep, deep, deep fundamental level, there's nothing that can touch it, because love in its purest form is eternal. It's changeless. It's formless.
And of course, this is what you've been pointing to this entire conversation. This is what A Course in Miracles points to.
Yeah. It's simple. Our minds just make it so complex, and it makes it so, the practices, and I've had that experience over the years of, am I doing the practices? Okay, I'm not judging. Okay, I'm not doing this. And I think a little bit of the conceptual mind is needed at first, but then, just for an understanding. And so it's integrated. Um, but then everything for me just continues to point back, beyond all the practices that A Course in Miracles offers and the lessons and everything. It's just this. It's just this. And we can sense it. If you're not driving, you can place your hands on your heart, or just you can have your eyes opened or closed. It doesn't matter. I am is here. And so it's about sensing it. Thoughts can spin, they can swirl around, but what you are, what I am, what we all are, is just this pure, effortless awareness that is the I am. And that's it.
Thank you for
That's
that,
it.
Jody.
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually a uh, Vedic uh, mantra meditation teacher,
Okay,
and
nice.
what you said was so vital to the real practice of meditation that thoughts come and thoughts go. They're not when we meditate. They're not our concern.
That's right. Yeah, they're not. And when we're upset, it's because we're identified with the thoughts. So thoughts aren't anything. Thoughts are just happening, and we know that because we don't know the next thought. We have no idea what the next thought is going to be. We we pretend like we know what's going to arise in our thought awareness, but really we don't. And so they're just happening. And when we become upset, when we become, you know, in fear and overwhelmed and just upset, it's because we've entangled ourselves with those thoughts. We've identified fully with those thoughts as the thoughts. So we can just look at the thoughts for the nothingness that they are, because they're nothing. They're all part of the mirage. And if we were going for a walk together and we saw a huge anaconda, but we knew it was a mirage, we wouldn't be scared. We would
Right?
we would laugh because it wouldn't be anything. And so I think it's just about not demonizing our thoughts, but instead seeing them for the nothingness that they are, because they, in sense, veil. And of course, they can never veil in truth, but they seem to veil our true nature because we're so identified with the thoughts. But thoughts are just happening; they're just happening, and we can allow them to happen.
And they also cause our interpretation of events and people. And every interpretation is speaking of veiled, is a veiled judgment.
Yep, a split. It's just a split mind.
Right?
That's all it is.
While we're on this subject, do you mind answering the question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, when illness or loss arises, where exactly does the suffering lie? In the event, the interpretation, or the identification?
The identification. Um, Yeah, because things can happen, thoughts can happen, upsets can happen, war can happen, catastrophic illnesses, events in the world can happen, but it's the identification with them that causes our suffering. Um,
Um,
so, yeah, so it's just about seeing the identification, and I think that's the dissolution. Also, is just seeing it without the judgment, but just watching what happens, watching the judgments, watching the thoughts, watching the stories of the mind, coming out of the story and into the holy instant.
and as you mentioned, with all of this being simple, that really, what you just said really was um, simple because so many people want to get rid of their thoughts. That,
Hmm.
I have people coming to me to learn meditation. They say, I don't know if you can help me. I've tried before and I just can't stop my thinking. And it's such an immense relief when you tell them you're not supposed to. Um, your brain is a thought producing machine, and it is it's going to do what the brain does.
Yeah. And
Fortunately,
staying the seer of the experience, staying the seer of the character's experience, that helps to disentangle ourselves from identification with the thoughts.
Right.
Yeah, rather than fighting, because that resistance, that push-pull is just gonna, as we all know, perpetuate the problem. When we try to stop thoughts, it just perpetuates it. So instead, kind of having this observer mind, the seeing mind, watching the character and all of its thoughts and all of its stories just happen. They're just happening, and it's okay.
Um, One of the teaching methods that I was taught was in mantra meditation. There's four things that can happen. You can be thinking the mantra, perfect, and it really is just another thought that you're very gently adding in. You could be having regular thoughts, which is fine because again, that's what the brain does. You can fall asleep, which is fine. Means you're relaxed. Means that the meditation has been relaxing and you're getting some benefits from it. Or you can slip into the gap, which is the ever present space between all the thoughts.
Hmm.
And as we go from mantra to thought, from mantra to thought, from thought back to mantra, uh, we, without even any effort, we fall into that gap. And we never know when we're there or how long we're going to stay there because the gap itself is without experience. It's without measurement, it's without judgment. So you simply are there, and then a thought comes and you go, oh, a thought. And then you're back in the thinking realm. And
Yep.
it's all okay. There's no judgment to the meditation at all.
Yes, exactly. And I think that allows the one who's meditating just to relax, because that fighting is what causes the angst of I'm not doing it right. I'm trying to get somewhere. That also the thoughts of I'm not doing it. That's who is the one who's trying to get somewhere. It's the unawakened one, but we're already awake. We're already here. The I am is here. We already are that which we are seeking.
Um, you have mentioned that maybe three or four times, and maybe we can talk some more about that. That the purpose of that question: who was the I? Who is the I that believes they're the thinker? Who is the I that believes they're the one suffering? That um, that self inquiry
Yep.
really can be vital to recognizing who we're. Just a simple question.
Yep. Yeah. And being mindful of not letting the conceptual mind answer. But there's a knowing, I think, within us when we ask that question. Who is the I that's overwhelmed? Who is the I that's fearful of this and this and this happening? It's always the character, because the eternal, changeless, formless self that we are is unaffected by all of it. And so it allows, like, sort of a quick, I think self-inquiry is like a fast track to abiding as the I am.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, and it is. I had a um, teacher who used to say, "Don't just ask, um, who am I?" But you can also ask, "When am I? When
Mm.
is this I appearing?" Um, and uh, you could ask, what am I? Who am I? Any form
Where am
of
I? We could ask, where am I?
where.
Am I in the world of form? Am I identified as this character? Or am I abiding as the formless nature that I am, which is not, there's no location.
And it's sort of when you run out of answers that you finally um, you've had that last rug pulled out from beneath of you, and you're just that freedom of not needing to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that don't know mind. The Because in truth, we use the words I am presence, and we use the words pure awareness and pure presence, but in truth, none of those words even come close to touching the essence that we are. So any concepts or identities or labels that we try to put on it, it's always going to fall flat. In my opinion, it's not going to so we could have these answers, but in truth, the answers just always are going to fall short. It's a knowing, and we don't need words to feel and sense the I am that we are.
Right. Um, and that's another thing with forgiveness for me is I know that I'm Eric. I'm not going to forgive. I'm not going. I'm just not going to.
Yeah.
Um, but when, but forgiveness happens,
Yeah.
and that brings me to that I am presence. Forgiveness. This is where the course really does become that non-dual um, uh, practice, the non-dual realization is surrendering, forgiving, true forgiveness, giving it to the Holy Spirit is simply saying that you're giving that which needs forgiveness to the light of I am.
That's right. One of my speaking to what you said about there's some things that the mind doesn't want to forgive. As the ego identification, we hold on and we have the stories and we have these things, and one of the things that I've come to practice when I feel that egoic resistance is simply, Holy Spirit, I'm asking for the healing of my mind, because it's a mind problem. It's not a perception. It's not a, this person did that, this event happened. It has nothing to do with that. It's the healing of the mind, because that's just being projected out, and these figures are acting according to our mind. And so when we heal our mind, which we don't have to do with the characters, thank goodness, and we just fully surrender, but have asking for the healing of the mind, or declaring, Spirit, I'm asking for the healing of my mind. The things of this world just start to dissolve. The forgiveness starts to loosen and kind of, jiggle its way free. But yeah,
Jody, I wanted to ask you about the script. The
hmm,
script is written,
that would
and
piss me off for a long time, just so you know.
well, now we have something to forgive for together. And it does. It's a hard thing to understand.
It was
Uh,
triggering time to the ego.
right, right. So, two things then I can ask you. What does it mean the script is written, and why did it piss you off so much?
The script is written is that it's done. Of course, the separation never happened, but we believe that it happened, and the separation's done. The atonement's done. It's finished. We and so everything within the script is done. The past, the future, the present, the events that happened. Um, it's done, and it's written. And I've come to also learn that our one choice is choosing to look at the experiences with love, with the Holy Spirit, or of the ego. That's our one choice within the script, is how we are perceiving the the world of form. And I think it pissed me off because for a long time I was manifesting. I taught law of attraction. It was all about, creating the life that we love and creating our own reality. So to hear that it was already written, it gave me this sense of lack of control. And I think to the egoic mind, the character of Jody really liked control, knowing that I had a little bit of control to create my own reality. And so you're telling me that the script is written and that I don't have control. And in fact, that was one of the things that came tumbling down in 2022 during my teenage son's suicide attempt, was just that, because I was never planning for that. I didn't manifest that. I wasn't
Right.
expecting it. And so it really was another rug that was pulled right out from under me, which which forced me either to lean in or to lean out. And I really leaned into the Course in Miracles. Um, and now, of course, I have a better understanding, and I'm okay with the script is written, because I know I still also have the choice. How do I want to look at this, with love or ego?
So if that's the only choice that we have, what does that mean to those who believe in free will?
Mm. Free will is a concept of the mind, as all our thoughts. They're, they're all concepts. Um, and that's just a thought. I think the, yeah, yeah, it's just another concept. And if you have to be willing to look at it to ask yourself if that concept is really serving you, or um, is there is there a higher knowing that you can step into and integrate according to your path? Because I would hate to say, don't do this or don't do that, or you could say that. I would just get curious about that. Just again, just get quiet, abide as what you are, and bring that question into the meditation and see what comes up for you with through this lens.
Um, so are you no longer um, aligned with the thought of manifesting?
So that's interesting because that's been quite a journey too. I was all about manifesting, and then I was anti manifesting. No, don't talk to me about setting intentions. No, don't talk to me about manifesting, because that's not of this world, and I don't want to play in the world. I want to play up here. Now I see it as I can play in the world of form and be a lucid dreamer. I can know that this world is an illusion, and I can still have fun with it. And it doesn't, again, because it's just a thought. Me resisting manifesting or
Right.
anything in the world is simply just that. It's just a thought, and we are not our thoughts. So I can be a lucid dreamer and have fun in the world, knowing that I'm not of it in truth.
I love that answer. And I can imagine a lot of people might let out a big sigh of relief hearing that. Um, because we do want to have some sense of control, and the law of attraction gives us a very deep sense of control, because
Hmm.
not only do we are we able to you know go out and get a job, make these day-to-day decisions in um, the more solid realm, but through our thoughts we're able to uh, use the power of our thoughts in order to create a life that feels more aligned for us. Um,
Yeah.
but as you said, ultimately, um, still an illusion. An illusion is an illusion is an illusion.
Mhm.
But do you know Lloyd Lapp and Stephanie Finn?
I've heard the name. I'm not familiar though.
Uh, they were up. They were up last month, actually on Valentine's Day, and Lloyd said, "Don't knock the illusion because it's the only place to get a good hot dog." Um,
I love
and
it.
it really does sum it up what you just said. While you're here, have fun.
Yeah,
And if the script says, "Hey, manifest yourself this dream job," well, then that too was part of the script.
absolutely. Yep. Yep.
And
Surrendering.
ultimately, we can't change the script, though, can we?
Not that I'm aware. No, we cannot. Um, and that's okay, because everything is here for an opportunity to awaken. I've come to that understanding and knowing, when I wake up, one of my practices just simply that is I allow everything, because everything that unfolds today is for my awakening. That's why I seem to have projected myself into this illusory world, so I can wake up and so it can wake up unto itself. And so everything that unfolds is for my awakening, whether I accept that or not. And when I don't make exceptions, then I accept it, and miracles, um, shifts of perception, and also in the world of form occur. So yeah, it's not an easy practice, of course, as
Right.
we are living this human experience, but it really does boil down to that.
And I like how this was pretty old, but Kenneth Wapnick uh, would liken it to a DVD with
Mm,
different versions. It's the same movie, the same script, but there's the director's cut. There is, an alternate ending. There is all kinds of little changes as you can change the DVD, and that as we practice forgiveness, and that really is what everything is for. Everything is a moment of awakening, um, because as you said, the only choice that we have is: am I going to choose love, or am I going to choose fear?
yeah. And that's up to us. And we'll have a different experience depending on which one we choose, of course, either being a hostage to the ego or the host to God. So I've the deeper I go, the less I want to make exceptions, because when you've touched the truth, it's hard to make exceptions to that truth. But the mind always brings up all kinds of opportunities to try to make exceptions to the truth. But everything is here for our awakening, and so I'm grateful for everything up until this point and beyond.
I've been given a lot of thought to appreciation lately,
Mm,
and how deep we could take that as a practice. And because, as you said, everything really is a gift of awakening. And if it is a tough gift, it means that we've been given a great opportunity to awaken.
yes, it's just, I think the tougher the lesson, the invitation to go deeper is what I've come to learn. The tougher it is, and being invited to abide more fully, to know more fully, to not make exceptions to the truth. Truth is true.
Right? Jody, how's your forgiveness practice now these days?
For me, it's very simple. It just comes to letting things be exactly as they are and not judging them. Because in doing that, again, it invites that sense of neutrality, which is which allows the mind to relax a little bit more fully and for us to recognize the truth that we are. So it's just that. It's just watching the mind, and as the mind creates the stories, because they're always happening and they're just happening. But my practice is just to not judge them.
Beautifully said. And I love that because it seems that we get to a certain point in the course, we're chugging along, we're feeling pretty good about things, and we're able to see the light of Christ within every event, every person. But there's still that subtle, okay, I see the light of Christ in you. Now be different. Now be better. I see the light. Now quit pissing me off.
Right.
Um,
And that's
and
seen, that can be seen by the IM. It can all arise. All of that's allowed.
right. And that's the amazing thing is that too can be without judgment. My judgment can reside without judgment.
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, I mention this often, all the time, that uh, I always, I imagine I'm bringing a guest up in order to say wonderful things to all the people who are in the chat or who are going to catch it later. Um, but really, it comes down to they have something very vital, very important to tell me, and that that thought of not even judging my judgment, um, just letting it all, just letting it all lie as it lies, without trying to arrange it or rearrange it, um, invokes such a sense of peace. Nothing can go wrong,
Not when there's no judgment, nothing can go wrong.
right? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Um,
Judging is it's all it's all the judging comes from the human mind, and we are not the human mind. And so it always points back to the truth of who we are. Judging or criticizing or, whether it's somebody else or ourself, it's all of the personal self-identification, and it can just be seen as awareness. It's arising as awareness as ourself, and without judgment, without judging the judging, like you were
Right.
saying earlier. Yeah.
I love how Kenneth Wapnick used to say that it's okay to choose the ego. Just know that you're choosing the ego. Um, and eventually, as it says in the course, that your tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limits. As long as you know that you're choosing the ego and you're always going to get ego results. And because the ego is nothing more than illusion, everything, all the results aren't going to be real. They're not going to be lasting. They're ultimately going to cause you pain if you try to cling to them. That eventually you'll stop, and you will start choosing love. You'll start choosing the Holy Spirit. And again, as you said, that the only choice that we have. And the amazing thing, it's not even really a choice, because if the ego doesn't exist, one, your question, who is doing the choosing?
Right. Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and thank you for your insistence with that self inquiry, because I don't know if I've been reading and using that Kenneth Wapnick quote for a long time, years, probably a decade. And this is the first time it actually occurred to me. So, who is choosing the ego?
Yeah. Not
It,
not not the big eye.
no, it's an imaginary choice,
Yeah.
which
It's all,
puts you right in the
and that's also written in the script as well. If we're choosing love or we're choosing the ego, that's already in the script as well. In fact. Um, yeah.
I've probably just the last couple months have really begun making peace with the script being written and finding comfort that really starting to really know on a deep level. So you mean something bad didn't just happen? Um, that this person either came into my life feeling like it was a disruption, or this person left my life, um, and that's just the way it was supposed to be. That I don't need to contest it.
Or try to cling or claw your ways into keeping it and not letting it go. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, and I too have experienced that a deep sense of peace in knowing that the script is written, and so the mind doesn't have to be up in arms if I'm swimming in uncertainty and how is this going to work out and how is that going to work out. I don't None of that is needed. You can just sit as if you're getting in the boat and going down a river. We wouldn't, turn the boat and paddle upstream. We would just get in the boat and float. And that's really what I think life is asking of us often. But our minds want to tell us, no, if I do this, I'll have more control. But this needs to happen and that needs to happen. And again, that's all tied to the personal self-identification and control.
Do you think anyone feels any better with that sense of control? Because isn't that its own form of torture? Trying to hold.
Absolutely. To hold it's expending more energy. Again, like I was saying in the beginning, it takes more effort and energy to be that which we are not. And so when we are identified as the self who's in control, who thinks they're in control, we're expending so much more energy, and everything is affected from there. And so if we can just relax, practice relaxing into what is, welcoming what is, and coming from a place of neutrality. We don't have to like it. We don't have to love it. We don't have to hate it, but we do have to accept it. Um, then, yeah, there's just a peace that arises. Peace is what we are, so it's actually not arising from an outside force. It's what we are.
Right. Um, do you have a course lesson? I like to refer to it sort of as my get out of ego jail free card. Um,
Mm.
Do you have one like you pull out at a moment's notice that helps you to fall back into that I am presence, that to not take it so seriously?
189. And actually, I have it right here. It's always sitting on my desk. 189. Simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is, all concepts you have learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks it is, either true or false or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy, and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought the past has taught, nor one belief you ever learned before from anything. Forget this world, forget this course, and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. So it's just sinking into the light within the mind.
Um, it's funny. That's another lesson the Fishman talked about with me. That's when he knew the course was legit. Um, because if it was written by the ego, it would never say, "Forget this course." So
Right?
forget everything else and hold on to this course for dear life because it's the only thing that you can rely on.
Right. Actually, it's one of the things that I refer to people when they mistakenly tell me that A Course in Miracles is like a cult. And I'm like, well, this is kind of a funny cult because it's actually inviting us not to hold on to anything, especially this course.
Right. And you're free to come, you're free to go. Not a whole lot
Absolutely.
of cults give you that give you that freedom. And
No,
they don't take away your concepts. They build a whole new concept for you. Um, and lesson 189 is really telling you let go of it all, every concept, and even the concept of being a Course in Miracles practitioner.
yep, absolutely. A spiritual seeker. Because again, I think I know from my own journey, I shifted from being completely asleep to a spiritual student to then a spiritual ego. It's like I know these concepts and they're all helpful and you need this and you need that and if only you practice this, and if only you
Right.
knew, this thing and that all has gone out the window.
Uh, I'd love to have a spiritual ego. I had a Course in Miracles quote or a deep wisdom quote for any situation. And one of my favorite was always "I need do nothing," um,
Mm, I love
which
that one too.
and I would use it really to just to irritate people. Um, I I tell the story of I would be sitting around watching TV, and my wife would say, it's uh, garbage night. Are you going to take the garbage out? And I would smile and say, I need do nothing.
I
Did not
love it.
get me very did not get me
It's
very
humor.
far.
Yeah, I'm sure not, but you got a good laugh, I'm sure.
Got a good laugh out of it.
And that's what we're
But
supposed to do, just laugh, not take any of this too seriously.
exactly. And that really is a good point. We do spiritualize the ego, and we like to think of ourselves as I've reached I'm level 2 Course in Miracles practitioner. I only have 2 more to go. Um, or along those lines. We love to think that we are an advanced student or we're on a deeper level, and it's another game, another thing to let go of eventually.
Absolutely. Another invitation, yep, to see the truth and know the truth and remember the truth and live as the truth. But yeah, letting go of the concepts because they sneak in there. I certainly notice in my own life, they kind of can sneak in there here and there.
Right.
And that can just be seen. Again, going back to the non-judgment, watching the character movie, watching it, see what it is, what's happening, being the seer of it, um, and not identifying because we're not that.
I think even in the non-duality communities, uh, there's a bit of um, I don't want to call it posturing, um, but just a bit of a I like to sort of call it, you know, when you were a kid, did you ever watch the kung fu theaters? And
Mhm.
one of the kung fu master would channel another and say, my kung fu is more powerful than yours. My non-dual
Yeah,
realization is more powerful
more
than your
powerful.
yeah, or my yoga is more powerful than your yoga. And it just seems to me as you're letting go and you're letting go, you're even letting go of your non-dual whatever. And you settle into a life of easiness and grace. When the personality appears, you have fun. The personality appears, you laugh, you know, you have a hot dog, a vegan hot
Yeah,
dog in my case.
exactly.
But but you don't. It doesn't become a thing.
Yeah,
You know,
I think, yeah, it became a thing and then it becomes a no thing.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
Beautifully said. That's Donovan, the Scottish folk singer from the '60s, wrote a song about that. First there is a mountain, then no mountain, then there is.
Hmm.
Um, and that really does describe, I think, how it is. But if you get caught up in any of them, um, then I think it can end up maybe being a painful realization that um, I've been sitting in this chair surrounded by people with a big smile on my face, and all of a sudden, you realize this is sort of kind of ridiculous. I should put my shoes on and maybe go out and get a job.
Yeah, you can just laugh at that too.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Jody, we have maybe about 10 more minutes. Um, could you let us know what's going on with you? How can we spend more time with Jody? How can we visit you? Um, Maybe experience some more of the beautiful non-dual meditation that you gave us a sample of earlier, and that was deeply profound. But it really was just a sample of how far you can actually take this.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, again, we don't need quiet. We don't even need 10 minutes to touch the truth that we are. We just need 1 nanosecond of recognition of that which we are. That's really all it takes. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love doing meditations. I do a live meditation every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern with the Center for Awakening. And you can just go to centerfораwakening.org, or Eric, I think you said you'll put a link. um, you can also visit jodyagard.com, and I have a couple of things in there on my website, which is still always a work in progress, but there's some things that might be helpful. Social media, I'm on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I randomly post when I feel inspired. I'm not like I have to post every, this time to this time. It's when I feel moved, I post. Yeah, those are the places that I hang out. I actually do. So I started doing traditional meditations. Actually, I've been working with traditional meditation networks for years. And some of those are still out in the ethers, and all you would have to do is type in Jody Agard meditation, and a ton will come up. If you want non-dual specific, just make sure you type in, non-dual, because you'll probably get some of the traditional ones. But they're on YouTube. They're on the Awareness Podcast. So the Awareness Podcast is also brought to you by Center for Awakening. And we do a little bit of this and that. We do the meditations are also on there. And then there's a couple of teachers who come on that I interview. So those interviews are on there. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
Any thoughts of a book?
Ha. So I've written 10, but I've only published two. One was my very first book in 2014. It was called Let Love In 101, A Practical Guide to Love and Happiness. That was when I really started to play with the course. I had very, very little understanding of what it was, but it's funny to go back and read the old book back then, because I can see where I was starting to point to, but I just didn't have the language yet. Um, and then from there, I wrote a book called Mommy Reboot, A Busy Mom's Guide to Self-Care. when I was in a self-care phase. That was very helpful. And, I think all of this has just been one gentle pathway leading me to where I am today. All that to say, I'm not finished with the book. I have been dabbling in it the last year. I think the message is just kind of being um, fleshed out. It's kind of, I noticed with my writing, it's kind of like a hose that you haven't ran in, at first. And it's like muddy water, and then the more you write and the more you flesh out the message, the the clearer the message becomes, and that's what I'm seeing now. So I'm just allowing spirit to move the timeline, however it's going to unfold.
Nice. I want to mention that I absolutely love Center for Awakening. Um, and just if you go and just watch the shorts alone, um, it's pure gold, and you never know um, what 30-second or minute clip is just going to hit you exactly where you need to be hit.
That's so
And
true.
very, very often it can stop you in your tracks, and it gives you that sacred pause. Um, and you don't know how, but your life is a little altered than when before you actually watched that clip. And I I watched a clip of you, and I thought, and I told you this, um, I want to talk to Jody. And it was just this. She has something to say that I most definitely need to hear, and you certainly did. So I
Oh,
want to just give you a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart.
oh, thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing this space to express these ideas and share. And but again, they're not ideas. They're just opportunities to abide in what we are. Everything just, I think if I could wrap up like this, Jody, what's your practice? What's the one thing? It's just that it all boils down to just resting as the I am that I am. Because in that everything else dissolves. In that I'll know which actions to take in the world of form, in this illusory world. In that I'll speak with more compassion. I'll have a better understanding. I'll be able to love my loved ones. So yeah, abiding as I am.
I don't know why in your description, uh, golf clubs came to mind. Um, and I don't even play golf. Um,
Okay.
but because everything else is just a tool that you have different clubs for different occasions, but
Mm,
ultimately, um, all of them, none of them are the thing itself. That you're returning this presence. You might use a different tool. You might use lesson 189. You might use a particular meditation, but that spaciousness itself doesn't rely on a tool. It's there, and the tools just sort of help you navigate in that direction when you need it.
yeah. I love that. I like that. That resonates. That's very true. Yeah.
Uh, Jody, you think you might want to hang out again?
Absolutely. I'd love this.
Um, I would love to talk more about what we talked about backstage, the pointing sometime, the headlessness, as well as I never got around to it. I wanted to ask you about trust as described in the manual for teachers, which has been a thorny issue for me. Um, so we'll have to do that on a part two, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's
And
do it.
if any of your friends from the center want to come by and hang out, send them in my direction, please.
Absolutely. I certainly will. Thank you for having me on. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This has been really
Um,
great. I appreciate all of you.
and I will send you. I'll send you the live stream when it's processed.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Thank you, guys. I will see you all later. Take care. Bye,
Thank
Jody.
you. Bye. Thank you so much.